This is Monday's BBC Newsline. Tonight's top stories. A man in his 50s dies after being attacked by another man armed with a machete in Omagh. The new Chancellor makes big changes to the mini-budget.
There will be more difficult decisions, I'm afraid, on both tax and spending.
We'll look at what it all means for people here. The family of this man, Tony Brown, speak of their devastation as a woman appears in court charged with his murder.
We're just in shock. His own kids are just in shock. I don't know how we move on from this.
The Taoiseach is in town to talk, but can he break the Stormont stalemate? We hear how one school in North Belfast is helping students with their mental health.
We'll sit down, we'll have a cup of tea first, and then we'll go out and plant all the lettuces and lucifers and mint.
I found it just boosted my endorphins and just made me feel like so much more happier.
Ulster's rugby players win for the first time in South Africa. We'll bring you that and the rest of the weekend sport.
And it's certainly been a windy start to what looks to be another very changeable week. Tomorrow, though, looks to be the exception. I'll be back with all the details later.
Welcome to the programme. A 53-year-old man has died after being attacked by a man armed with a machete outside a house in Omagh. Another man was also injured. The PSNI say a 20-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. Our South West reporter Julian Fowler has more.
The residents of the Moor estate in Omagh woke this morning to a murder inquiry outside their homes. A large area of the estate cordoned off. Behind the police tape, officers in forensic suits at work. The investigation was focused outside several properties in Sleafcool Park and Moor Drive. The police say they were called just before midnight last night to reports that two men had been attacked outside a house by a man armed with a machete. Officers arrived at the scene along with the ambulance service. One of the men, aged 53, died a short time later. Another man had injuries to his hand and was taken to hospital. A 20-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. He remains in police custody. The events have shocked the local area.
Obviously very sad news coming from the Moor area and Omagh area, and first of all my deepest condolences to the family and friends, the children and partner of the deceased. It's very tragic news for a family to wake up to this morning.
The police say they want to speak to anyone who was in this area last night or in licensed premises in the Gorchin Road area before the attack to contact them so they can try to establish what happened. Julian Fowler, BBC Newsline, Omagh.
Now, the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has ditched almost all of the tax cuts which were announced in the government's mini-budget just 3 weeks ago. Among the reversals are the energy price cap, which was meant to continue for 2 years. It will only run in its current form until next April. The planned cut to the basic rate of income tax, going to 19 pence, has been scrapped. But the planned cuts to stamp duty and the reversal of the rise in the national insurance rate will remain. The Chancellor also warned that he'll be announcing further measures on the 31st of October, and he said they will be difficult decisions. Here's our business correspondent, Clodagh Rice.
The not-so-mini budget continues to unravel after instability hit everything from mortgages to pensions. Today, the new Chancellor rode back on plans to cut taxes.
There will be more difficult decisions, I'm afraid, on both tax and spending as we deliver our commitment to get debt falling as a share of the economy over the medium term. All departments will need to redouble their efforts to find savings, and some areas of spending will need to be cut.
Cutting spending will also have a knock-on effect here. We know there's already a black hole in Stormont finances worth more than £600 million, and the Finance Minister says we're already facing a challenging picture.
After 10 years of austerity, which has brought our public services to their knees basically, which has stripped the NHS of the support that it needs, not only to look after patients and the health of the public, but also to try and reform itself as well, that we might be heading down another austerity road with the British Government again is something which will cause huge dismay.
The plan to support household energy bills, which was due to run for 2 years, will now only run for 6 months. And a review will determine what support is in place thereafter, which is likely to be more targeted and less expensive. One group, which says half of homes in Northern Ireland are already in fuel poverty, says this means more uncertainty for household budgets.
The fact that PRNI came out on Friday saying that they would have had to put up electricity prices by 60% had that not occurred, and as it stands that was coming down by 10%. So those are some positive things in that. Now where we are today is that we don't know what that's going to look like after April. So for example, are we going to see electricity prices bounce back up to 60%?
Almost all of the tax cuts have now been reversed, and this does seem to have given some confidence to the markets. But what will this mean for your money? Well, mortgages are still high and energy bills are still expected to be high even after April. But the next details we'll get of the Chancellor's plans are in 2 weeks' time on Halloween. Clodagh Rice, BBC Newsline.
Our economics and business editor John Campbell is here. Let's pick up on that final point from Clodagh there, the energy price cap. How does it work?
Well, the price cap basically involves the government telling the energy companies there's a limit on how much they can charge us for each unit of gas or electricity that we use. And as Clodagh Peace was explaining, we really got a sense of what that means on Friday, because PRNI said without the price cap, prices would go up 60% on the 1st of November. Instead, they're going to be down 10%. And we expect the other energy companies to make similar announcements. Now, that is an incredibly expensive policy for the government, because effectively they have told the energy companies to sell to us below cost, but to avoid them going bust, the government is having to subsidise the energy companies to tune of tens of billions of pounds. But effectively today, Jeremy Hunt said that is too expensive in its current form. It was supposed to run for 2 years. It's now only going to run for 6 months, and something will replace it in April.
So what might happen in April then?
The Chancellor was talking about a more targeted scheme. So that might mean you have an energy price cap for lower income households, potentially something targeted through the benefit system. I think what would cause concern in many households is for those households who are on fairly modest incomes but don't qualify for any benefits. How will the energy support affect them? Will there be some sort of sliding scale where you get less support as you go up the income distribution? We really don't know yet, and that is going to be essential to many household finances, because remember, energy prices are forecast to remain high, not just this winter, but well into next winter.
What about the one-off energy payments? Are those still happening?
Yeah, so far as we know, they are still coming. So that's the £400 to all households in the form of an electricity credit, and an additional £100 credit to those households that use things like oil and LPG. But we still don't know exactly when that money's arriving. OK,
John, that's really helpful. Thank you. Still to come on the programme. It's Book Week, and we'll hear more about the hundreds of events being organised to encourage people to get reading. The family of Tony Brown, who was killed at his home in West Belfast on Friday, have described him as a gentle giant. The 54-year-old was stabbed at his home in Woodside Park in Polglass. Today, 33-year-old Victoria Maximovich, also from Woodside Park, appeared via video link at Lisburn Magistrates Court, charged with his murder. Kelly Bonner has the story.
The family of Tony Brown lay flowers outside his West Belfast house. Once a home, now a crime scene. His family described him as a gentle giant.
I'm lost for words. I just can't get it. Tony wouldn't hurt a fly. I mean, he had 3 beautiful kids and 2 wee twins that he just adored, and a son. And like, I remember me and Tony really often talked, and he would have told me he couldn't wait to see them walk down the aisle. How gorgeous they were, how everything. It's never going to happen.
Appearing in court today, charged with his murder, is 33-year-old Victoria Maximovich from Woodside Park in Polglass. The Polish national spoke through an interpreter to confirm she understood the charge against her. Mr. Brown was stabbed in his house on Friday evening. He was taken to hospital but died from his injuries. His family say they've been left devastated at the loss.
Tony was the baby of the family, the whole family, the youngest brother, and everybody's just in shock. My oldest brother, we're just in shock. His own kids are just in shock. I don't know how we move on from this. He was just my wee brother, and I just can't believe what's happened to him. I'm just traumatised at this. I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know how to cope. I don't know what to do. Our wee brother is dead.
The case against Victoria Maximovich has been adjourned until November the 14th. Kelly Bonner, BBC Newsline, in West Belfast.
The Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, says political stability in Westminster is important in finding a resolution to the protocol talks and the restoration of the Stormont executive. After a day of talks with the 5 main parties, he said there is still time for the DUP to take their seats. But the DUP leader says it's difficult to see that happening before the 28th of October, the deadline for restoring the executive. The Secretary of State says if that doesn't happen, he will call another Assembly election. Here's our political correspondent, Gareth Gordon.
They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. The Taoiseach came north for talks with 4 parties who want the restoration of power sharing today and one, the DUP, which doesn't until the protocol is altered.
But in the current circumstances, it's difficult to see that solution coming forward before the 28th of October. We have to be realistic about that. The question as to whether there should be an election is a matter for the government entirely. We are very clear. If the government decides to call an election, we will fight that election. We will take our case to the people.
And so, 12 days out from the deadline for restoring power sharing, began a day of talks which seemed doomed from the outset to the obvious annoyance of the others.
I think it is absolutely scandalous at a time when people are feeling real pressure on all of those fronts. That there are those within the elected cohort who just don't want to do their jobs and are refusing to, but are also blocking those of us who are willing to do our jobs from being able to.
It's fairly coincidental that the first time they don't come first, they don't go into government. I mean, the DUP know well that their absence from Stormont has no impact whatsoever on the negotiations between the European Commission and the British government. If they want to do a deal, there'll be a deal done. It won't be because Jeffrey Donaldson stamps his feet.
This is a little bit of a here we go again moment, because we've been here, we've had this conversation, nothing has changed. You've heard what we've said, you've heard us say it time and time again. No doubt every single political leader that has come out of the meeting has said exactly the same thing, and I will say exactly the same thing as well.
Just yesterday, in a speech in County Kildare, Micheál Martin attacked Sinn Féin, accusing the party of attempting to intimidate opponents and the media with threats of legal action. But apparently that never came up during their meeting today.
We've had a very constructive conversation with the Taoiseach around his role as co-guarantor, and that all efforts need to be made, as we've always said, to find an agreed way forward in the protocol, and then we need to get around the executive table. And there needs, as I said, no more delays. The DUP need to join the rest of us who want to make politics work.
All the Taoiseach can do now is hope for the best, no matter how bleak things appear.
Clearly, political stability is important in terms of the resolution of these issues. There is time to go before that deadline. There is still time for the DUP to take its seats in the Assembly to facilitate the convening of the Assembly and the restoration of the Executive, and that's where my focus is right now.
It says a lot when even politicians concede they're going through the motions. This deadline may be 12 days away, but already it appears all hope of beating it is gone. Gareth Gordon, BBC Newsline, Belfast.
Some of today's other news now, and a man in his 50s has been left with life-altering injuries after being hit in the face with an axe in East Belfast. It happened at a property in the Craiga Road just after 10:15 last night. 2 men, aged 19 and 22, have been arrested. A former Sinn Féin councillor has been jailed for 4 years after admitting facilitating a murder. 33-year-old David Byrne was shot dead at the Regency Airport Hotel in Dublin during a boxing weigh-in in 2016. Jonathan Dowdle and his father Patrick Dowdle both pleaded guilty to facilitating Mr Byrne's murder. Patrick Dowdle has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for his role in the crime. More measures to prevent the spread of bird flu have been announced by the Agriculture Minister. From midday, Northern Ireland is once again under avian flu restrictions. Similar restrictions have been in place in the Republic for a month and will also be introduced in Great Britain today. Now, many people find gardening a good way to relax, but one North Belfast school has now added it to the weekly timetable for some pupils. Blessed Trinity College has also provided more music and dance to help young people with their mental health, as our education correspondent Robbie Meredith reports.
Green fingers and the green shoots of recovery from lockdowns for Corin and Tony.
We'll sit down, we'll have a cup of tea first, and then we'll go out and plant all the lettuces and lucifers and mint.
Before I started it, I knew nothing really about
gardening and all, but Mr. McAllister's taught me a lot about it. Like, I didn't know how sunflowers and all, like, what you had to do to take care of them and all.
The stress in the past couple of years with lockdown and all was a bit tough, but coming back into school and doing the garden was a bit more calming and relaxing for all.
But it's not just gardening. Pupils have also been given the chance to try things like filmmaking and dance, as well as DJing, working with a professional DJ from the Bounce Culture Arts organisation to create their own mixes.
We also had an amazing session in DJing with Qua from Bounce.
And all that made a real difference to those taking part.
My favourite thing was doing the DJing with Qua because it made me feel confident and we learned how to use the decks and it made me feel confident myself.
I found that it just boosted my endorphins and just made me feel like so much more happier. I just loved being with my friends and making our own pieces. It was just very fun.
In fact, the whole project itself has taught me to be more sociable towards others. After the project, I made a few more friendships and I listened to music quite more often, and I would be honest that if I was saying that I would create more soundtracks in my home time outside of school.
The Creative Schools project, as it's called, gives pupils the chance to try new things outside their day-to-day subjects. Blessed Trinity are firm believers in it.
A lot of these activities the children would never have attempted ever, and when they attempted these things they realised they could do them, and that meant that we're hoping that they take that to other parts of their life as well.
And growing that well-being and confidence could benefit them for life well beyond the classroom. Robbie Meredith, BBC Newsline.
Brilliant. Now, it's that time of the year again. Book Week, organised by the BBC and Libraries NI. More than 200 events are taking place as libraries here encourage us to keep reading. And the BBC has some special programmes too. Mark Simpson has had a sneak preview.
A television series is running all week on BBC One and the iPlayer, asking people to choose their favourite book and to talk about reading.
I was the ultimate bookworm. I think when I was a child, I genuinely thought I was Matilda from Rodal, that, you know, in the book where she just constantly reads everything she could.
I also used to read encyclopedias because I remember my mum and dad paid for like the full set of childcraft encyclopedias.
I did not spend much time as a child reading encyclopedias, but I read pretty much anything and everything I could get my hands on.
Whenever I was growing up, it was pre-Netflix era, so books were definitely much of a bigger part of my childhood. I used to love a wee novel.
If you think you're not a reader, you just haven't found the right book, because there is a book out there for you. You just have to go to the library, go to the bookshop, or go to the friend's house and find the book.
It seems there's something for everyone in the next 7 days.
Well, this is our biggest and most ambitious book week yet. I think there are 220 events taking place in our libraries across Northern Ireland. We've got lots of output on iPlayer and on Radio Ulster, BBC Sounds. And get involved yourself, because our libraries are brilliant places. It's all free and you can read as much as you want.
This recently recorded Ulster Orchestra concert included music inspired by books. Paddington Bear was of course the inspiration behind that piece of music. You can hear many more on BBC Sounds as this year's Book Week tries to hit all the right notes.
And if you want to find out more about those favourite book choices, the Read All About It series is now on the BBC iPlayer. Time for sport now. Stephen Watson's here, and a big win for Ulster Rugby at the weekend.
It certainly was, and what a brilliant game it was, Tara. Yes, Ulster Rugby continued their impressive start to the season with a thrilling bonus point win over the Lions. It was the province's first ever victory on South African soil in the United Rugby Championship. And Ulster now move on to Durban, where they will take on the Sharks in the second half of their Southern Hemisphere trip. Thomas Kane reports.
10 tries and 76 points between the two teams. At high altitude, it was a breathless encounter at Ellis Park, but one that Ulster just about edged.
I'm sure for people watching back home it was a nail-biting game, but for us to show the resilience and come out at the end there, it just shows a reflection of how far we've come in the last year.
And yes, an opportunity, they've opened it up.
It was a game that tested Ulster's grit and fighting spirit. Robert Balakoon set the ball rolling
Taking it in.
as the tries kept coming.
Now from Yellen with a pass, Rob Little. He's got pace, Rob Little. Can he get over? Easily enough in the corner.
The Lions, though, were relentless, refusing to back down. It may not have been a perfect display from the travelling side, but one that was enough to claim the all-important win.
I thought we did really well whenever we needed to, but obviously there's some areas of our defence maybe not up to scratch, but we dug in really well at the end there to get the win, so I'm very happy.
The objective now is to make it a South African double in Durban. Thomas Keane, BBC Newsline.
Well, sadly, not as good for Ireland's cricketers down under. They suffered a defeat in their opening game at the T20 World Cup in Australia. Ireland lost by 31 runs to Zimbabwe in Hobart in a match where very little went right, as Nigel Ringland reports.
It all started so well. Ireland won the toss, put Zimbabwe into bat and got among the wickets early.
No, this is excellent from Ireland. 3 wickets within the power play.
But Sikander Raza hit a defiant 82 to turn the tide and set a competitive target.
Knocked him over of the final delivery.
The Ireland reply started badly.
Well, and the big wicket of Paul Stirling, what a start.
Things didn't improve thereafter.
Edge gone.
And Zimbabwe were in total control.
Catching opportunity. Taken, safely held. Another one, 2 and 2.
Ireland's next game against Scotland on Wednesday already looks like a must-win after a night to forget in Hobart. Nigel Ringland, BBC Newsline.
Yes, Ireland needing to bounce back. Now, in Gaelic games in a weekend of club finals, Dunloy's hurlers made it 4 Antrim titles in a row, while the All-Ireland champions Kilcoo retained their Down football crown. Here's Mark Sidebottom.
For a decade or more, Kilcoo have dominated Down football, and this year's campaign has been the toughest of the lot.
What a score from Sheelan Johnson.
It's the mark of champions, and the current All-Ireland kingpins simply do not know when they are beaten.
Rifles it into the top corner of the net.
I just don't like losing. That's just bred into us. It's just, even in training matches, like our panel's been brilliant this year. I think there's just something special about this group of players.
In the Donegal decider, St Eunan's and Naomh Conaill went toe-to-toe, and the losing of the game for the Letterkenny outfit was arguably the losing of Shane O'Donnell to a decidedly dubious first-half red card. Naomh Conaill, with a numerical advantage, edged the second half to win by a point, and in the process landed a third county title in 4 years. Meanwhile in Antrim, Dunloy chasing 4 in a row were rocked by an early Cushion Doll goal, with the game scarcely 25 seconds old. And the riveting contest would in the end be the story of 2 goals, one early and one very late. Dunloy's injury time strike securing yet another Antrim title. Yeah! Next up, it will be either Portaferry or Slough-Neil in the provincial decider. Mark Sidebottom, BBC Newsline, Corrigan Park, Belfast.
In local football, Derry City are through to the final of the FAI Cup after beating Treaty United 2-1 in yesterday's semi-final at the Brandywell. The Candy Stripes went 2-0 up early in the game through goals first from Jamie McGonigal and then Brandon Kavanagh. The First Division side would reduce that lead with a penalty, but Rory Higgins' side secured the victory and a first appearance in the final in 8 years. At Snooker's Northern Ireland Open in Belfast, Mark Allen is in action shortly in the second round against Chen Zifan of China. The Antrim man is defending the title he won last year. We'll let you know how he gets on tomorrow. And finally tonight in motorcycling, James McManus was crowned the British Junior Supersport Championship at the weekend, with Glenn Irwin finishing the runner-up in the British Superbike Championship. Great weekend for our bikers, Tara.
Brilliant, Stephen. Thanks very much. Let's get the weather now. Cecilia's here. Hi, Cecilia.
Hello, Tara. Hello, everyone. Well, it is going to get a bit calmer tonight. It's certainly been very windy today, winds gusting over 50 miles an hour in some areas. The satellite picture more or less tells the story over the next few days. So this is today's area of low pressure. It's going to track away. This is an area of low pressure that will bring more rain and strong winds later in the week. And in between, we get into a little ridge of high pressure for tomorrow. So tomorrow's probably going to end up the best day of the week. I'm sure there's tons of leaves down at the moment after the winds over the last 24 hours. So it's probably, if you can, a good day tomorrow to get out and about and enjoy the autumn colour. Now, winds are beginning to subside, although it's quite blustery at the moment. They will continue to reduce this evening and tonight. The showers will ease away too. And we'll end up with clear, calm conditions overnight, which means it's going to be a lot colder, freezing in places, so some frost, and also some areas of fog tomorrow morning. And because the sun is weaker at this time of year, it means some of that fog could take a while to clear. So there could be a bit of fog around through the commute tomorrow morning. It'll be a chilly start, but outside any fog, and once the fog clears, it's going to be a nice day. Dry and bright, if not sunny at times, much lighter winds, and despite a cold start, it will end up pretty mild for the time of year, 14, maybe even 15 degrees. Now, initially tomorrow evening, it's still dry and clear, but as the night goes on, that other area of low pressure I showed you, well, the cloud from it starts to edge northwards and the winds pick up again. By the end of the night, there could well be some rain knocking on the door of southern counties. There is a bit of a question mark over how far north that will come on Wednesday. It looks as though the bulk of it could well stay across the Republic and then weaken, and maybe the second area of wet and windy weather will bring more widespread rain to Northern Ireland through Wednesday night and Thursday. So potential for thundery downpours across the Republic. Some of those will edge northwards. The winds will be increasing again on Wednesday. This time they're coming in from the east, so the east coast will get a bit of a battering. But parts of the north coast on Wednesday, although it will be quite blustery, could well stay dry. It's this second area of wet weather which will come northwards through Wednesday night and into Thursday. And for Northern Ireland, that means more widespread rain and some fairly brisk winds as well. Temperatures overall not particularly low, and after tonight it will certainly be milder at night, but the winds will quite often be a feature of the weather.
Cecilia, thank you. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.